The 24-25 Women's Super League is on winter break and it gives us a perfect chance to assess every team's season so far. We discuss whether they've met expectations in the first half of the season, what transfers they need to do in January, and predict the second half of the campaign. Today we cover Manchester City. After missing out on the title by goal difference last season, the expectation was high for this campaign. However, at the halfway stage they find themselves trailing leaders Chelsea by 6 points. We discuss whether that gap is bridgeable, what they need to do to close it, and why winning a trophy is crucial for Gareth Taylor keeping his position as manager. This is our mid-season review for Manchester City. Alright, let's get into it then. Today we're continuing our series of reviewing every WSL club's mid-season, and today we're on to Manchester City. It's been an interesting season for City so far. How would you assess their campaign, Harry? Has it been underwhelming or expected? Are they overperforming? How would you assess it?
They've had some highs and lows. I think they've had some real, incredible moments over this campaign. They've also had some really tough periods, and overall it middles out to be a little bit of I think it'll be a disappointing first half of the season. Yes, they're second in the league, but to be 6 points off Chelsea and only a point ahead of the likes of Arsenal and United and Brighton are also coming up close. I think City are on the wrong end of the top four battle to where they'd want to be. But as I said, they've had some brilliant moments. The win at home to Barcelona was a huge achievement. They've had some big wins over the course of the season, but they've also had some tough moments. The loss at Everton. The opening game against Arsenal, they probably were pretty lucky to draw, if anything. So overall, I think City will be disappointed on how their season has started. But there's a big second half to go. There's a lot of points to play for, and there's still a lot to be decided. So they can make up for it, and they can get themselves right into that title fight. But they will feel like they've missed their opportunities at times to catch Chelsea and to punish Chelsea. And there's just been some performances that haven't been good enough this season.
Yeah, I think like with most things, the assessment depends on the lens you view it through, the perspective of the situation. Because Manchester City have not had a bad season. But when you consider that last season they were joint with Chelsea on goal difference at the end of the campaign and only lost the title in that manner, I think that they would have considered this season as their opportunity to go and take a real fight to Chelsea, considering this is the season where Emma Hayes has gone. And there was a bit of an unknown with Sonia Bonpastor coming in. I think this is the season, as I say, where City would have thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity to take the title off of Chelsea. And yet we're sat here a few months into the season, almost halfway through the campaign, looking at a situation where it looks incredibly bleak for Manchester City. So I think that'll be a source of real frustration for Taylor and for City. I think that this was a season where they could have really competed. A draw to Arsenal on the opening day, they really set the tone for what we could expect this campaign. The Chelsea game in November just showed that there is levels between the two sides at the moment, and obviously a loss as well to Everton right at the end of the year. I think that is particularly damning.
Yeah, that I think the last game week before the last WSL game week before Christmas proved exactly where everyone is right now. Chelsea gave Manchester City an open goal to close that gap to in 4 points in Man City had won. So, that was a huge opportunity for Man City because people will say, well, City have still had a brilliant year. You can't compare them to a Chelsea side who are unbeaten. But the fact is that if you compare this Man City side to what they did last year, they were with Chelsea right until the end. And, Chelsea gave them an opportunity to close that gap and Man City took it. And and Chelsea ended up extending it out of that weekend, which was absolutely bizarre.
Yeah.
Man City when Chelsea slipped up last year, Man City were so good at punishing them. If Chelsea drew a game or lost, a game, Man City would punish them and they'd be right behind them. They've had one chance this season to do that, to close. They've already lost to them. They had an opportunity to close the gap, and Man City were miles off it. And they're now in a position where yes, it's only 2 victories, and you can look at it as 6 points. It's an unbeaten Chelsea, and you need them to drop 6 points. But you can also look at it as 2 game weeks. They are 2 games away from being with Chelsea again. If they beat Chelsea and say Chelsea lose to someone else and City win a game, suddenly they're level on points again. So it really depends how you look at it. I think you have to take into account that Chelsea have been flawless, which means they're very unlikely to drop 6 points. But for City, it's definitely not over yet.
I think the problem is you look at the fixtures they got left, and it feels more like the City will drop points. They play Manchester United twice in the rest of this season. They've still got to play Arsenal at home, and they've still got Chelsea as well at home. And while Chelsea have obviously still got to play United, still got to play City and Arsenal, it feels more realistic that City are going to drop points than Chelsea do. And that, for me, is the problem. I think as well what we've seen this season is an over-reliance on Khadija Shaw. Because you look at some of the games this season where they've not been convincing, or Lauren Hempel indeed as well. And those are the players that step up. You think Aston Villa this season, you think back to the Liverpool game. They're games where City didn't play particularly well, and perhaps that result would have been different if they didn't have Shaw and Hemp. And indeed, the same is probably true of the Everton result. Yeah. If they'd had Shaw and Hemp, maybe they'd have been all right. But there is an over-reliance on them to create everything in this City team, really. And I think that was really exposed in the Everton game. I think they were really poor in the final third. They couldn't break Everton down, and they couldn't just brute force it by putting a ball in the box and knowing Khadija Shaw's probably going to win that header. Yeah. And that, for me, made the big difference. City really over-rely on those two players to perform. We saw that in the Everton game, the fact they couldn't break them down.
And that's why, you mentioned the fixtures there, that they've got to play United, Chelsea, Arsenal. The concern for City will be that they all come very closely. The Manchester derby is the first game back. And you talk about those key players. Alex Greenwood definitely won't be back for the United game. Shaw will only just be back. And I think, again, it'll be touch and go with Hemp. And although I would be surprised, I'll be surprised, depending on the Ipswich Town game, obviously they have got the FA Cup game, but I'll be surprised if they're both ready to play that one. And,
they shouldn't be, but they need like 20 minutes to get back to sharpness.
They're going into their big games and they still haven't got their big players back. And I think there's a lot of City fans out there who are slightly concerned that they could end up on the wrong side of the result in the Manchester derby. Then suddenly that's another drop of points, and they could find themselves 9 points behind Chelsea before January. Obviously, that could be completely different. They could, the Manchester derby might be the title result to start 2025 and kick it off with a bang and build some momentum. But City, they need to find a way to shift the responsibility onto other players. They cannot just rely on two players to win them the league. And it's not going to work.
It is worth saying that whilst the chances of winning the league now look diminishing by the second, it's worth saying they're in 2 domestic cup competitions. They've got European football. They're in the latter stages of the Champions League. They should be able to finish second or third and qualify for the Champions League next season. So whilst the league and the title may be out of grasp, and it certainly isn't yet, but it's looking like that, I don't think this season's a write-off yet for Manchester City, but a trophy is paramount, really.
They can't go trophyless another year, and as you say, they are still in both cups, but the Conti Cup, they've got to beat Manchester United, and then they have to play one of Arsenal or Brighton. That is a horrible run to the final if they are going to get there, and if they do get there, they're probably going to face Chelsea, so City will have to work if they want to win the Conti Cup. FA Cup and obviously Champions League are both dependent on the draw, but City, they're gonna have to, because again, I don't see them doing anything without bringing players, or not bringing, but finding players that can, take responsibility when Shaw is out, or if Lauren Hemp needs a rest, can you find a player that can, live up to what City need to find the back of the net to deliver some consistent numbers? Because at the moment they're not.
I think the problem for City as well is that there isn't really a standard. I think when you think about this season, if City don't win a trophy, I still don't see Gareth Taylor being sacked. And that, for me, ask the question, why? Where's the driving force? Where is the motivation to go and perform? And I don't think Taylor's doing a bad job, especially considering I think there are some huge gaps in that squad that they're just not addressing because the starting 11 is good enough. But I think the fact there isn't that high standard, there isn't that expectation to go and win trophies, and they haven't won anything now for a few years, I think that they'll really want to win something this season. But as I said, I don't think there is that expectation to, or that pressure to.
I think, that is the thing, that they are at the moment, if they don't win a trophy this year, it feels like City are still sending out a message that, mediocrity is okay. Finishing in the, last year was a bit different because they were so close to the WSL title, but the last couple of years it's just been like, we're finishing the top 3, we haven't won silverware, but that's okay, we're all right with that. They shouldn't be. They're Manchester City. They should be wanting to go out and win trophies. But for this year, as you say, this year for me, a trophy has to be won. But if it isn't, do I think they'll make any big changes? Probably not. And that is a problem. So I think they've got 6 months here where they need to prove a point. They need to prove that there is ambition to be successful. There is ambition to go out and win trophies. Because I know it was tight last year, but it's all all good and well saying that we're going to challenge Chelsea, we're going to push them all the way, but that doesn't matter if you're not going to beat them.
All right, let's talk January then, and what the January transfer window should look like for Manchester City. It's difficult to to judge at this point, but it feels like City need a big January window with the first half of the season that they've had. They have already made a signing of Rebecca Nack. I think that goes away to solve their defensive frailties. She's a 28-year-old German defender coming in from Rosengard. I think it's a good addition. I believe she scored something like 12 goals last season, the Damselvalsken. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Or Vensken. But yeah, she'll add something at centre back. I don't think Alana Kennedy's been very good this season. I think that still a reliable rotation player, but the problem is when that rotation becomes a starting spot due to injuries, you start to see issues arise. We saw that in the Chelsea game. I just don't think she was progressive enough in possession, and I think that she slowed the game down way too much for Manchester City, and that allowed Chelsea to get back into shape and then they could press quite effectively. So I think that was a bit of an issue. I think Knack will be a much better suit for this Manchester City side.
Yeah, very much so. As you say, again, Alana Kennedy is not a bad player, but this season she's been caught out in way too many different scenarios. You can't with Kennedy. You can't just look at her and go, "Oh, she's not very good on the ball, so she's struggling against Chelsea." When the Everton game, it wasn't about how it was just. I mean, I know that was a bit more of a team game, but she had a shocker. She got caught out every single time. She was outran by Tony Payne every single time, and that ball in behind was the problem. So when you've got a defender who struggles in possession, but also struggles when she's out of it, when she's up against any quick forwards, that's a massive problem for a top team. So signing a centre half was needed. I mean, if Nap comes in and scores 12 goals, that might replace what they had from Khadija Shaw. So they might be all right.
Exactly. I think any goal scoring outlet is helpful. I think it's going to give them a bit more presence, a bit more pertinence from set pieces, which I think is really useful. So yeah, I don't think it's a bad signing at all. I think it's a really handy addition and a good way to kick off the window. And let's talk other things that are going to happen then. Chloe Kelly, where do you see her future?
I think she's going to leave, and wherever that may be, I don't think she's staying at Manchester City. I would be very surprised if she was still a City player come the end of this window. Just have it clearly, Gareth Taylor has no desire to play her on the football pitch or give her any minutes. So for Kelly, it should be a no-brainer to leave, and it doesn't look like Taylor and City are going to stand in her way, really.
Well, it depends how much City hold out for a decent paycheck, because she's got 6 months left in her contract. No side's going to pay more than 100,000, maybe 150,000, but I can't see a huge fee. It depends how much City want for her. Because I think if she had a couple of years in her contract, it's a £200,000 player. So it really depends how much they hold out for. I think the issue that could arise is that there's no middle ground.
Yeah.
The clubs that could want her, could purchase her, aren't going to want to pay that much for her. And City are still going to want that. So I'm not sure if that gap can be closed. In which case, I could see her sticking at City until the summer and again, not playing many minutes. And then obviously look to get a move. Well, will get a move when she leaves on a free. I think that's been an issue though this season for City, is that they've got a player there who is one of their higher earners, who was such a crucial part of the squad, and is now just sat on the bench. It's a waste of a spot. It's a waste of money. I think they've got to look to move her on this window, even if it's a cut price, and then look at their options, because they've got Virginio now, who, while I agree, we did a video on Kelly, and there's some very good comments. A lot of people talking about how Virginio wasn't at the level of Chloe Kelly. I'll agree she's not yet. I do think that Virginio's ceiling is quite high. I think we've seen some really nice aspects of Virginio's game. If she can just start to add contributions to it, I think that's a real well-rounded player there. You've got her. You've got Fowler, who stepped up this season. Obviously, Hemp can plays the left flank. You've got Khadija Shaw. You've got Park, who can cover out wide if need be. So I don't think it's a huge loss if they lose her, and I think they would be able to look at who they could sign. I mean, Murphy's been fantastic as well this season, so that's something to consider. They've got good youth talent that they can rely upon. So I don't think it's a big loss if they lose Kelly, and I think the money that could then be reinvested in the squad elsewhere would be invaluable. So yeah, I think it's a no-brainer just to let her go, even if it's at a lower price than City would like.
Yeah.
In terms of other options, a backup forward I've noted down. I think if Kelly is to leave, they may look at options, even though they have got quite a few in those areas. I wouldn't be surprised if they looked at a good right winger, even if it's something like a Eula Brand for the summer. That is a huge step up in quality.
It is. I think the problem is I would say backup striker. Also, they have got Miedemar who can play that. She's favoured to play. Obviously, I think she's more likely to play in the midfield three. And I don't think Mary Fowler's a striker. She's looking much better on the right hand side. So when Shaw has been injured, seeing Fowler come into the central area just hasn't worked and doesn't work. And I think that has to be a position where City have to not replace, but have to find a backup, because you think Khadija Shaw's going to play every game. Yes, she is, but she's with her injury record over the last 2 years, then you need to have someone who can come in and play. But also, if you bring someone to give her competition, it means that she's not playing every game, which means she's less likely to get injured again. So for me, a backup striker would be absolutely crucial, and just someone that can A, bring their own goal output, and B, help other players kind of raise their game as well, and just cover the minutes when either Shaw's not there or when Shaw needs a rest. Because there's been so many games this season, like against Bolton or Hammarby in the Champions League, against the weaker sides in the WSL, where realistically Khadija Shaw doesn't really need to be playing. She could be getting rested. She could only play a 30-minute cameo in a game like that, but she's had to play the full 90 because there aren't many other options.
Yeah, it depends on the long-term plan, I think, for City, because they've got Poppy Pritchard coming through, who I rate very highly. If they see her as good enough for next season, then maybe they don't need anyone. It depends on how they view it. I also think, because Pritchard's only 19, it's realistic that you could have a 2-year timeline on her being in the first team.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the loan move to Paris has bore much fruit. So I think another loan move next season, a club that perhaps fits her more nicely, could be a better option. And then look at reassessing the summer after that. It depends who you bring in as well. It depends where you see Khadija Shaw in 2 years, because it's not unrealistic that she isn't at Manchester City.
Yeah.
And that's an eventuality they have to plan for. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. Katoto, I believe, is available this summer for free. I think so. She's up for free. So that could be a fantastic addition if Man City are being frugal there. So, I think there are options for City to explore, and they could do a hell of a lot worse than Katoto. So they've got options. And then obviously a backup defence midfielder is really important. Whether that happens in January or the summer, we will see. But for me, if they want to win something this year, they've got to have a replacement to Hasegawa, because if not, she will get injured before the end of this season, because she's played every minute, and she will continue to play every minute. It'll be a miracle if she survives it all.
Similar boat to what I said about Khadija Shaw. You have to find someone who can give competition to Hasegawa, but also just fill in when she's not needed. Again, those smaller games, those Champions League games where they were already through, didn't need Shaw and Hasegawa playing in that, but they had to play because they don't have anyone else who can play those positions. City, it's a no-brainer. Have to bring in backups for the players that you have in key areas. That's the reason Chelsea do so well, because they've got two. I mean, I know they're struggling at the moment with a bit of squad depth at centre half, but across every other area of the pitch, they've got 2 or 3 players who can play every position. So, and City don't have that. City need to reinforce.
Yeah, and let's predict the second half of the season then. We'll start by looking at the domestic cups. So, Women's FA Cup, they've got Ipswich Town. That should be no bother.
Lovely.
How deep do you see them going in the FA Cup this year? That put them into the round 16.
For most teams, we say it depends on the draw, but for Manchester City, unless they draw, even if they draw Chelsea, to be fair, you expect them to go deep. You expect them to put up a fight. So they've got to be at the sharp end. Last season they were knocked out by Arsenal, weren't they? In the quarters or the round of 16. It was they have to do better than that. So. They have to do better than that. It's a No, they're not that way. Tottenham in the quarters on penalties, weren't they?
Yeah.
That was poor. They should have got. And then suddenly, if they'd won that game, they'd have got Leicester in the semi-finals and gone to the final.
Where they played Man United and probably would have won the FA Cup.
They have to be at the sharp end. They didn't get to a single domestic cup final last year. They have to change that. They have to be in the final of one of the cups.
Indeed, as the Women's League Cup, it's going to be a really weird situation, because they're going to play Manchester United at home on Sunday the 19th of January, and then they'll play that Women's League Cup tie in the midweek on the 22nd of January.
I don't like that.
No, I don't either. We're going to be watching a lot of Man United Man City that week. But I think that's a game at the moment that you would favour United. My only question is, obviously, if they've played on that Sunday, then you're going to have a sort of a direct understanding of how each other want to set up. So the big question then is who adapts quicker for that League Cup quarter final. Is it Mark Skinner or is it Gareth Taylor? It's really difficult to judge.
It is.
Both good tacticians in their own right.
And I do worry that it either means it's going to be a dull league game where no one wants to give anything away, or it's going to be a dull League Cup game because everyone knows what each other's doing and no one's changed anything. But we will see what happens. Overall, as you say, the League Cup, it's a really horrible... The draw has really favoured Chelsea massively. And it's if City again, they're gonna have to work. If they want to get to the final, they're gonna have to work. But that's the same for every other team. You know, they're very capable of beating Man United, and they're very capable of beating Arsenal or Brighton in that semi-final. And then suddenly they've got a final against probably not Durham, but you never know.
Durham.
It could be Durham. That would be incredible. Not only because they've got to the final, they've beaten Chelsea, and then had to beat West Ham or Tottenham. But yeah, City. They need to be in a cup final for me this season, at least one, if not both.
Yeah, as for Champions League, I guess, again, it's one of those that depends on the draw. They're either going to have Chelsea, is it Lyon or Wolfsburg?
It's
no,
tough.
Arsenal. They could play as well, couldn't they?
That's tough. That's really tough, especially, again, I think they'll fancy themselves.
Arsenal, Chelsea, Lyon.
They are Man City. They can beat anyone on their day. They've beaten Barcelona this season, but yeah, it's going to be a really tough tie, whoever they get in the quarterfinals. It's either going to be two teams they know domestically or the incredible Lyon side that Joe Montemurro is currently leading to glory. So it's going to be tough.
I think they'd favour the Arsenal game.
Yeah,
I think that should be a game they should win, but then you never know. I think that'd be a really... It's still a difficult game. I think out of those three options, that's probably the nicest one.
Which says a lot.
Yeah,
about Chelsea and Lyon.
Yeah, indeed. It's difficult. I think they'd much prefer to be top of their group because a game against Wolfsburg or Real Madrid is much more favourable.
Yeah.
But they've just got to deal with what they've been handed, really. I think it's going to be a tough draw. It's a really difficult Champions League quarter-final stage. Think back to this point last year and you still had teams like BK Häcken in there.
Yeah.
You had much more winnable games. So, and Ajax, obviously, who were a difficult side, but... well, proved a difficult side, but on paper should still be a comfortable win. But this year, really, really tough final 8. So, yeah, it should be interesting. But again, it depends massively on the draw. I can't see City winning it. I can't really see them being in the final unless they get they suddenly become really strong. Yeah. Again, quarterfinal I think is going to be really difficult. If they get Arsenal, I could see them winning it, but then I can't see them getting past the semi-final stage.
Fair enough, yeah.
Right now. Let's talk in the league then, because they come back to Manchester United, Villa, Arsenal, Liverpool, Tottenham. They don't play Chelsea again until mid-March. Where do you realistically see City finishing? Is second the most likely possibility? Could you see them dropping? Could you see them anywhere near Chelsea?
I think it's paramount that based on the fact that they're 6 points off Chelsea and only 1 point ahead of Arsenal. I think it's paramount they finish second. They have to focus now. Actually, they're going to focus on the title. They're always going to focus on the title, but they have to be looking over their shoulder as well because they're a couple. As we see, if they lose that Manchester derby, they could be 4th in the league, and then suddenly they're not even worried about a league title, and they're out of Europe qualification. So for City, they have to focus on finishing second. And if the pieces fall into place and Chelsea drop enough points and they find themselves in the title fight, then obviously they're going to focus on that. I just think they're asking Chelsea to do too much in terms of dropping 6 points. And because Arsenal and Man United are so close behind them, I think there's more chance they slip out the top 4 than they do catch Chelsea. So for City, if City play, City will finish second if they play their football, if their key players come back, if they have a good window. But they've got to be careful because if they pick up another couple of injuries, they're in a really tough spot. So for me, the focus has to be finishing second and just let whatever happens. If Chelsea drop points and you find yourself 1 point off going into the final day, then fair enough. You've done well to get back in the title fight. But City focus on staying second.
They've got Crystal Palace on the final day. If that's
a nice game,
which is quite a nice fixture. But yeah, I can't see anyone other than Chelsea win the league right now. And even if I were to predict someone else, it wouldn't be Man City. I think United and Arsenal are more likely to somehow pull it off than City. I just think City squad is too weak at the moment. There's too many holes. There's such a lack of squad depth. Yeah. Maybe with another defence midfielder, with another defender potentially, another attacker, maybe they're in a conversation. But I just think in terms of depth, they don't compete with Chelsea. In terms of quality, they don't compete with Chelsea. So where do they, in terms of manager, they don't compete. They're not even in the same transfer as Chelsea. Where do they compete at the moment?
Yeah,
that's the problem.
It very much feels like all will be proven in the next few weeks with the Manchester derby, with Chelsea Arsenal, with City Arsenal. There's a lot. I feel like all will be revealed very soon.
The problem is City could find themselves 12 points off.
And in 4th
realistically, at the start of Feb, they could find themselves 12 points off and outside of Europe.
And and then suddenly Gareth Taylor is under a lot of pressure.
Indeed,
because I think that's probably what will be. That's the way he will be removed. Is yes, they haven't won a trophy, but if they drop Europe, the thing they've had, They haven't won trophies in the last couple of years, but they've always had European qualification. If they were to lose European qualification...
No, they didn't have it the season before.
Yeah, because Man United had that incredible...
Last season, they didn't have any Europe because they had finished 4th. But they'll be hoping to get Europe. It's really important for them to be able to go and attract more players, to be able to be then competitive with Chelsea. I think they really want European football. I'm not 100% sure they're going to get it right now, which is not a perfect situation to be in. They're only a point ahead of Manchester United in 4th. They're only 5 ahead of Brighton in 5th. So if they were to drop points to United and Arsenal, they could slip behind Brighton even.
That's incredible.
So yeah, it's really close at the moment. It's difficult to call. But without some serious January investment, there are some issues for City.
Yeah, very much.
But
So.
I think they will invest. They've already signed Rebecca Nack. I think they'll keep going in that vein. So we'll see. And an exciting pre-contract signing or an exciting addition now could be exactly what they need really to kickstart their season again. But it's been a tough start to the campaign.
Yeah, very much so.
When you look at it now. But yes, I think that is everything from us today. Do get involved in the comments below. Give your thoughts on everything we've spoken about. Give your thoughts on City's season so far. And if you're new around here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and join the community. Other than that, go and check out the rest of our mid-season reviews. We've done one for every WSL club so far, and we've still got a couple to go to finish off this week. And then we're into FA Cup action this weekend. That, though, is everything from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.